have such a great turnout tonight. We are now live on YouTube. And what we are asking is for some of the participants that are in the webinar, if you could switch to the YouTube channel, and that would give us some room to bring an interpreter in that we're looking for to join us here on the panel. We're not able to do that because she's not able to get in right now with so many people on the actual webinar. And you will be able to ask questions on the YouTube channel as well. So you won't miss anything from being in that space instead of in this space. I think that we should get started. Again, I just want to ask if a couple of the people who are watching on the webinar could possibly switch over to the YouTube channel so that we can get our interpreter in here.
We're good.
We got it? Okay. Great. Thank you all for your help with that. I'm gonna not take a lot of time to do much of an introduction. I hope that everybody on the webinar and on the YouTube channel had a chance to read the letter that we sent home Monday, I think it was.
Para que todos tenham te dar chance de
we should not be hearing that, Richie.
I think she has to be made an interpreter. I don't see that I have the power to do that.
Okay.
The same way that you just did for Natasha.
Okay. We can. I'm gonna add you as an interpreter, and that should get us set up and ready to go. Okay. And you're doing Portuguese, is that right?
correct.
Gabby, I'm asking Gabby.
Yes, that's correct. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, Gabby is doing Portuguese, right?
Yep.
Correct.
I'm not hearing anybody respond. Okay. It's not letting me add her as an interpreter, Richie.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. It should work now. Yes. I know, I don't either. Let me try this one more time. You might have to select something, Gabby. I have you listed now as the Portuguese interpreter. Click update again. Okay, all right. Right. And it says to me that yours is, let me just do this again, hold on. All right, try that now, Natasha. I can still hear you. Mm-hmm.
I can't hear them, Dr. Kelly. Is interpretation selected on yours?
Oh, you know what? I was in the Spanish room.
Right.
Oh, boy, what a day. All right. I think we're ready to start.
Good.
Okay. So welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight, both in the webinar and the folks who are watching on the school committee's YouTube channel. I want to thank you all for being here. We realize what an important topic and stressful and challenging this is for everybody. I do hope that all of you have had the opportunity to read the letter that we sent home on Monday, and got some information from there. And rather than me spending a lot of time talking, we thought that we would go right into questions. And the way that we are hoping to do that is, if you're on the webinar, you can write questions in the Q&A, or you can raise your hand, and we will moderate that. Dr. Galucci is going to help me, and Dr. Mokaba. And then you can also list questions if you're on the YouTube channel. I see folks are practicing with that, saying hello already. And if you're in the webinar, you can select under language, you can select to listen in Portuguese or Spanish. I believe if you're on the YouTube channel, that you can change the language option there. I'm not certain of that, to be honest. But we'll go ahead and get started. We have 15 questions right now in the Q&A. So I'm going to begin with those. And Dr. Galucci, did you want to read the questions and then we can respond to them?
Sure. So Danny asks, when students go back to school, will they be required to wear the school's uniform?
And the quick answer, the quick simple answer is yes, they will. We do feel like having that kind of tradition and keeping things simple for students is going to be beneficial to them. We recognize that some parents, especially with so many people having financial constraints right now, that purchasing new uniforms for kids who have likely grown a great deal in the last year might be a challenge. And if that describes your situation, please reach out to your school principal. They're making uniforms available for students in financial need who need them.
So the next, there's a series of questions in the next response, Dr. Kelly. The first is there a plan to have teachers vaccinated soon?
There is. I'm actually very excited to report that thanks to the mayor's office and the Revere Board of Health, we're going to start vaccinating teachers a week from Friday. And we're still putting all of that together and working with the Board of Health to do that. But we do have a vaccine clinic planned for teachers on Friday, March 12th.
The second question asks if there's going to be barriers between students during class sessions. I think we're thinking about the plexiglass partitions.
Right, and there, we will not be using plexiglass partitions, and that's based on guidance from the CDC. We do have all students spaced 6 feet apart so that they are maintaining social distance, and all members of the school community will be required to be masked at all times. Students will have mask breaks that they can take during the day, and teachers will be coordinating that. Adults as well. Adults will need mask breaks as well. So that time will be built into schedules.
The third question asks about evaluations of the ventilation system, specifically retrofitting and or updating.
Yeah, and we're fortunate in Revere to have so many new buildings that we have. Most of our ventilation systems are phenomenal and needed no work at all. We did do some new filters in the Beachmont, the Garfield, and the high school building. We put in the MERV 13 filters in the classroom univents. And everything is, we're having between 4 and 8 air exchanges every hour, which exceeds the guidelines on ventilation. So we're, unlike so many other districts, in really good shape on ventilation.
The third question asks about the school calendar being updated beyond the month of February. I believe that is available on the website, but I can certainly check that after this webinar and get an updated version up there. But I'm pretty confident we had put an updated version up there. And then the final question in this series is, with just over 90 to 100 days remaining in the school year, why rush the return with no definitive plan of easing parents' concerns over very key issues not limited to those that we just discussed above?
So we are certainly trying to meet the needs of every parent. And some parents prefer to have their kids remain at home in a full remote model, and we are accommodating that. Other parents would prefer for their children to be in school at least part of the time for in-person learning. And we are accommodating that. And we really do embrace whatever decision parents make, whatever they decide is best for their child. We're hoping to make all of those options available.
Okay. One kind of comment question here is, I don't like the idea of elementary students hybrid schedule. Why the 45 minutes after school?
So we're trying to make sure that we're balancing a lot of different constraints right now. And one, of course, is we want to make sure that kids are getting enough time to learn, but when they're with us, making sure they have some time to engage and that we can address their social emotional learning, but not leave them completely unattached to the schools in the afternoon sessions, which is why they have the one time later in the day to log in and reconnect. And for elementary, I think the question was in particular for elementary, it gives the kids a chance to close out the day with their teacher, see if there are any last questions, if they'd had a chance already to look at their homework, if there were questions that came up, and how they can get some extra help on that. At the middle school and the high school level, or at the high school level in particular, their last period of the day is the same kind of thing. It's an extra opportunity for kids to get additional support if they need it, or for the teacher to engage with smaller groups of kids in different ways, finalize a lesson. They can have a more deeper learning experience by having a class that meets once in the morning and once in the afternoon. And our goal is just to have that kind of freedom that kids and teachers can benefit from as they see fit. Some of our constraints that we're experiencing right now is still trying to make sure that kids are safe and that the amount of time we spend in classrooms unmasked is minimized, which is why we made a schedule where kids will go home with their lunch and be able to eat safely at home unmasked.
We have a specific question, but it might be kind of good for all to hear about the students that would be coming back Monday. She writes, good evening, my daughter is in the first grade and I want to know if she will return for in-person learning on Monday and what time that would be.
So you want to answer that one, Dr. Bellucci?
Sure, Monday, March 8th. So if your student is scheduled to return on Monday, you will be hearing from your building administration with all of the details about their start date on Monday, March 8th. If you have not heard from your administration, your child is not in that first return on March 8th. That's a very small population that we're bringing back on that date. And if your child is in that population, your building administration will certainly let you know.
And there are, I'm looking at the YouTube channel. If we can switch over here for a couple of questions, we can switch back and forth. And one of the questions is, how will we know which week our child will attend in school? And everybody will get a letter next week from principals identifying, assuming your child is not in the special education program, it will identify whether you are in cohort A or cohort B. And then the list of weeks that are going to be for cohort A and cohort B, I'm going to share my screen briefly. This is in the letter that we sent home. So if you go to the very end of the letter, there is a schedule that shows which week each cohort meets. So for example, our cohort A kids in particular grades, early childhood, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, 6, 9, 10, and all of our EL students at the high school only will return on March 22nd. The cohort B students from all grade levels will start on March 29th, and then we'll start our alternating between cohort A and cohort B until the end of the school year. And again, you will have a letter next week by I forget what date we said, Richie. You will have a letter, an individual schedule for your child, each of your children, that identifies their cohort and exactly what their schedule is.
Mhm. Dr. Kelly, there's a question. Can students sign up for hybrid learning, which I think means in-person learning, if parents initially requested full remote learning in the online survey? So the survey was closed today. The second survey went out in January, and we've been fielding responses right up until today. We're now at the point where we have to make definitive plans for those students that are going to be in person and those that are going to be in remote. So at this time, there most likely could not be a change. If you have concerns about this, you can contact your building administrator.
Yeah, and I would just ask people to be a little bit patient with that. The administrators are working really hard to get all of those individual schedules done that I just mentioned. So it really is hard for them to make changes right now, but you should definitely let the principal or your child's teacher know that you're interested in a change. And as soon as we can make that happen, if we can make that happen, we will. We've done a lot of scheduling and design based on the responses that parents gave us in January. And we've designed class sizes to make sure that we can still social distance, and done some alterations already. So it's hard for us to make a whole lot of changes right now, but it is definitely worth you notifying the school that that is what you would like to do, so that if it is possible, we can make that change. And I'll just add, it's kind of an opposite question, but if a parent initially chose hybrid and wants to switch to remote, we can make that happen more easily because we don't have the space constraints to be worried about. And right now we are kind of in a critical point of trying to make sure the reopening happens effectively. And I do think that even if we're not able to make a change right now, we may be able to further down the road in April.
One quick follow-up on the uniforms, asks if they can be optional. Right now, they are still part of our school programming. If you are in need of uniforms, you can certainly, as Dr. Kelly said, once we get over this kind of initial crush, reach out to your school for support with that. But certainly, just make them aware that you're in need, and at some point, once we're on our feet with this return to school, we can provide support if you're in need.
I'm going to switch to one of the questions on the YouTube channel is, will there be after-school programs available? And right now we're focusing more on the high school with after-school programming, and they're going to be gearing up some clubs and activities for after-school work. We're trying to figure out exactly how that would happen at the middle school and the elementary school level, where sometimes transportation is a little bit more of an issue. The high school kids are a little bit more independent. But for the younger kids, they're getting dismissed for an earlier day, and that's because another piece of that reasoning is because teachers have all of their prep time, their lunch time comes after the kids are dismissed from school. And so they're not readily available right at the time when dismissal happens. But we are hoping that as we move hopefully smoothly through this initial hybrid phase, that we'll be making changes to lengthen the school day. And that's going to take some negotiation. We think that with the vaccine coming on board, that's going to help us. But when we get to that place that we have full school days for kids, we anticipate that we would be able to expand after school programming to middle and elementary school. And if we figure out that there are ways to do that sooner, we will do that sooner. We recognize that for a lot of kids, it's not so much their math class or their English class that helps them through the school day. It's their music class at the end of the day, or being part of the band or the yearbook. And we value those things very highly. Do you want to go to one,
Yeah.
Dr. Lucci? We can
Yeah,
also.
so there's one about will students be switching classrooms, or will the teachers rotate for high school aged children or kids? So I can answer across the board, K through 12. Our planning really tried to cohort students to have as minimal transitions as possible. There are going to be some instances where, like, especially at the high school level, where students would have to meet in a particular elective. There might be other instances where students receive direct services, or students receive some type of intervention that requires them to be pulled out of their cohort. So there will be some transitions. However, it's going to be incredibly minimal. And just a reminder that populations in the school in general will be around a third when they're at a maximum capacity, a third of the students that we typically see. But those transitions will be planned out. It's not going to be the typical kind of hallway with the mass amounts of students. Our hallways are clearly marked on the floors, on the walls. We have two-way traffic marked. We have instances where staircases were not 6 feet wide, and we've dedicated one staircase to be an up staircase, another staircase to be a down staircase. And certainly in the kind of initial welcome back, that's going to be part of the orientation process, just as it is with any kind of opening day of school, where all of those things are reviewed and students have a clear understanding of how to travel in the hallways, how to maintain distancing. And like I said, those instances will be minimal.
Okay. And you know, some of the questions, I just want to say that some of the questions are repeated somewhat. And so please note that if somebody else asks the same question as you did, we'll only be answering it once. And you know, what the next question that I see on YouTube is how many students will be in each classroom at a time. And that's going to vary, but our maximum class size right now would be 14. However, many of our classes are much lower than that. It's around 7 or 8. And so that's one of the things that we want to do as we move forward through this roll-in, is really monitor for opportunities to bring more kids in on a more regular basis. So we're committed right now to the every other week. But if we end up having classrooms where the number of families that are requesting their child be in for in-person learning, if we can accommodate those kids on both weeks, then that information will come out from principals, and they will invite families after we get through this initial phase to increase their child's in-person learning time by adding in that second week. And again, that's going to be on a very classroom by classroom basis, because we might be able to do it in one room but not another. Again, our goal is to give parents what helps them the most, and that would be another option that we hope to layer on as we progress into our hybrid model. And somebody did ask a question about going to full days once teachers are vaccinated, and that's something that is a goal that we hope to get to later in the spring.
Dr. Kelly, I'm going to combine two questions, and maybe you could show one of the sample schedules for elementary. So it asks, what will the new schedule for elementary kids look like in the school system? And a question that kind of corresponds with that is, for hybrid on the home weeks, who will be teaching the students? I think
Great
that
question.
visual of the 2-week
Okay.
snapshot.
Yep. So, and again, this is in the letter that folks should have gotten on Monday. If you didn't get that letter for some reason, it is posted on our website in English, Spanish, Portuguese, and Arabic. But this is a picture of the elementary schedule. And this is actually a 2-week snapshot. And this is, you know, an example for a cohort A student. So in their first week, they would attend school in person. And you see that they would have breakfast first. That would be followed by a morning meeting where they would do things like check homework, ask questions, do a community circle to talk about how everybody's feeling, if anybody has anything going on that they need to deal with before we get into our academic periods. And then from about 9:25 until 12:40, they would be in their academic blocks. And, you know, these give some time ranges, but they're really variable in different schools. We anticipate that in this time block, most kids will have their English class, their math class, a science social studies class, and one of their specialists. So maybe art or music or phys ed. It will vary by students. After that, they will have dismissal. They'll go home with their lunch. And then later in the day, they will log back in, and you'll notice that this last block from 2:05 to 2:45 is shaded gray. And that is because it is a full remote block for all students. And so if we look at the week B schedule, so the same student now is in their at-home week, we still put breakfast on the schedule because we want to encourage kids to eat breakfast. And these kids that are at home will Zoom in or Google Meet into that same morning meeting that they had on their in-person week. And we thought that would be a good opportunity to continue to build the community, because the cohorts the kids are basically split into two groups. They're going to miss some of their classmates that are not in the in-person environment with them. And so having the morning meeting allows all of the kids to reconnect, to connect with their teacher together, and to address any special circumstances that students are experiencing on that day. The at-home kids in their remote week will also log in for another 65 minutes, and the specific time will vary by students and by classrooms. This will be identified on the unique schedule that is sent home for each individual child. It will show when those 65 minutes are, but it's sometime between 9:25 and 12:40. We encourage kids to eat lunch even in their at-home week, so we wrote that into the schedule. And again, at the end of the day, they will reconnect with their class, with their peers, with their teacher, and kind of have that end of day movement where they might go over, the teacher might have identified an area of confusion for a lot of kids. They might want to spend a few minutes talking about that. And they'll talk about what the homework assignment is and if everybody got that done, or any other important information that kids might need in order to be prepared for school the next day. And I think, that'll be especially relevant for kids who are getting ready to transition from their at-home week to their in-school week, or vice versa.
Another quick question about snack time between breakfast and lunch for elementary students.
And we're still working out exactly how that's going to happen and when that might happen. It is another area or another situation where kids would be in groups unmasked. And I know that principals are working to figure out, especially when there's good weather, for kids to be able to go outside and do that. So I think that's going to be unique to each school building.
And just one clarification I want to make on my early answer with transitions. It's, with juniors and seniors having a more diverse elective schedule and the need to switch in and out of different classes, transitions would be heavier at our top two grades. However, those students are older, more mature, and obviously can take directives that they will be given in regards to when they transition, how to safely transition to ensure that those are safe.
I'm going to jump to one of the YouTube
Sure.
questions, just so we don't miss all the folks on YouTube. But the question is, what about the Lincoln School? That's not a new school, which is true, but their HVAC system was entirely replaced several years ago. So although the building might not be shiny and sparkling, I mean, it is in terms of cleanliness, but the HVAC system is is newer and met all of the guidelines on its own.
Mhm. Someone asked about whether or not they will remain with the same teacher if they switch to in-person from remote. I would say that our goal as a district has been to keep students with their teachers. There are certain circumstances that won't allow us to do that if there was a change in terms of which format you preferred. And if that is indeed the case, you would be hearing from your school to let you know of that change.
The next question on YouTube, it's actually a statement. I'm concerned that children will not be getting enough teacher time. How are the teachers supposed to teach online and class students at the same time? And again, because the students are cohorted, except for the full remote kids, the kids who are in the hybrid, we anticipate that there might be about 10 to 15 kids total between the kids that are zooming into parts of the day and the kids that are in front of the teacher. And we worked with teachers to develop these schedules. So we feel confident that they are set up for success. And again, I just want to reiterate that our goal is to give every parent an opportunity to have what they feel is the best mode of instruction available for their kids. But we acknowledge that none of it is perfect. Like everybody else, we're doing the best that we can to get through the pandemic and make sure that kids have what they need. We do feel like the in-person school time is going to be important for students' social emotional well-being. And it's perfectly fine if you feel that that's not necessary for your child. You certainly know your children much better than we do. And we entrust parents to make the decision that's right for their kids. But anybody who feels like their child needs more time or more support, our goal is to do whatever we can. And as I said in the letter, when we get into this mode, if something's not working, please let your principal know, and we will do whatever we can to try to meet your needs and your child's needs.
There's some questions about transportation. So right now we are going to have our typical transportation routes. We are still finalizing the times. If you clicked into the link in Dr. Kelly's letter, you would see all of the stops that would be available. If you indicated that you do indeed need bus transportation on our survey. So that would certainly be available. We're finalizing the exact pickup and drop-off times, and that information will be out shortly.
One of the questions on YouTube is, are kids going to bring computers when they are in person? And again, as the letter indicated, we do want students who have a school-issued Chromebook to bring that and their charger to school with them. And depending on the teacher, they may or may not be using that in the classroom, but it's, certainly a great tool for some lessons, and we want to make sure that is available for classroom use as well as at-home use.
Dr. Kelly, there's some questions about simultaneously teaching in person and remote students in terms of what that's going to look like in the classroom. Certainly, we're going to have distancing parameters in place where the teacher will be able to service students that are in person as well as those that are working remotely. It wouldn't be the kind of it wouldn't be the format where the teacher would be in the corner of a classroom and not have access to those remote students as they are delivering the lesson.
Yeah. Okay. And one of the parents asked, are we supposed to feed our kids lunch on the ride home? I'm trying, to navigate the sarcasm that's in some of the questions. We really do want to give solid information to parents. So the answer is that kids will be dismissed around 12:30, some of them a little earlier, some of them a little bit later, and they're expected to log back in at 2 o'clock. So we do hope that that would be ample time for people to get home and have lunch and the kids to have a little bit of a break. But I'm going to try to focus more on the questions that are framed in a way to be helpful going forward.
One is about a student that wouldn't be able to wear a mask. So all of our students are required to wear a mask. If you have specific accommodations, I would recommend certainly working with your child's teacher or administrator in terms of establishing effective mask wearing procedures that would allow them to function during the school day.
Okay. I'm going to let you take another question. I'm still.
Okay. So one asks, will the students be required to take MCAS this year? That is a Department of Education decision, and right now they are scheduled to take MCAS. We don't have definitive details on that just yet, but we are planning accordingly, just as we always have, in case that is indeed the case once MCAS time rolls around.
One of the questions is, can we choose to do only 2 days out of 5 days a week that they have in person? And the answer is that we are asking families to commit to either participating in the hybrid in-person week, hybrid mode, or do full remote. So unfortunately, we cannot accommodate a whole lot of switching in between those two modes. And families are going to have to make that choice if they want to continue to learn in the full remote environment, or if they want to participate in the hybrid. And I will say again that teachers helped us work on these schedules. They feel very confident in what it's going to look like. We anticipate that they'll have, maybe 10 kids in front of them and 5 kids up on a monitor, and they'll be engaged in the same lesson together. So I understand that parents are worried about a lot of this. It's strange and it's different and unclear exactly what it's going to look like to you. And I think that as we work through it, we will see how it is, and we will make adjustments as we need to.
In terms of what changes being made for bus transportation to ensure safety, so students will have assigned seats on the bus, spaced as much as possible within the bus. Windows will be open. We are hiring bus monitors to ensure that students are in their assigned seats. And in a worst case scenario, if there was a report of any type of COVID case, we would be able to contact trace and alert families of that case.
All right, so I think that you just answered a question that we had too, which was about what happens if somebody in school gets COVID. And I also want to mention that we will have weekly testing available for students and staff that are attending in person. And that'll be free COVID testing available to anybody who wants to participate. It's fully voluntary. Your child does not have to be tested. If they are symptomatic, they will go to the nurse, and we have rapid COVID tests that will be on hand that we can administer if somebody is symptomatic, and that also we can administer if one of the pool tests comes back as a positive. The pool testing is a whole nother webinar that we need to do, and we have our first meeting tomorrow with our partner who's going to be providing us the testing kits, and our nurses and the Revere Board of Health will be present on that call. But we are going to have regular surveillance testing available to all adults and students, so that if somebody does test positive, even if they're asymptomatic, we will know very quickly and be able to remove that person from the school population before they're able to become a spreader to other people. And that's in addition to all of the other safety precautions, such as the social distancing, the mask wearing, and all of those pieces that we'll already have in place anyway. And there will be more information coming on that probably next week. And when we have more information clearly delineated on that process, we will be sending home permission forms for parents to register their kids for that program, and be doing another webinar to share more information on how the whole testing protocol is going to work. But we're getting that working as well.
So I'll take two questions. One asks, how often are the restrooms going to be cleaned? I would say multiple times a day. That started in the fall, even when we only had staff in the building. So certainly those restrooms are cleaned multiple times a day, and certainly cleaned once folks are out of the building. Another question asks, will there be physical education classes? Yes, there are going to be physical education classes. However, those classes will focus on wellness, physical fitness, without necessarily the competitive games that may have students in close proximity to one another. So those students will work on certainly an adapted type of PE this year that will allow students to stay safe, but still get the physical education that's part of their programming.
One of the questions was about the early release at 12:40. And the question actually says that there's no before or after school programs available, but there actually are. We've had Alphabet's program in place since the beginning of the school year, and that will continue to be available. I think the number of seats available at each school might be a little bit different, but parents are welcome to register for that, and if we need to expand the programming, we will do our best to accommodate all parents who have requests for that before and after school care.
There was a question about breakfast being a requirement. So at many of the schools, as you see in the schedule, that breakfast first period class kind of morning meeting is a great opportunity for students to come in, obviously sit safely distanced apart from one another, but certainly collaborate, communicate with the teacher and their peers. And so that's going to really be kind of a morning block for students. And certainly we encourage them to attend according to the times that are listed in the schedules.
And one of the questions is, what happens if the kids do not log into that last class of the day? Will they be considered absent or dismissed? And the answer is absent. So they'll be marked absent for that class if they don't come. Another question that we have is, so seventh graders are going back on March 29th. And the answer is the cohort B seventh graders will go back on March 29th. The cohort A seventh graders will start on the first cohort A week, which is April 5th.
Question specific to high school and athletics, but I also want to add in extracurricular clubs. Students who have remained and decided to be fully remote are more than welcome to participate in athletics and extracurricular clubs.
There's a question about how will transportation work if a family moved. If your child has direct transportation due to special needs, you should notify the special education office of your new address so that we can accommodate that. For all others, our regular transportation schedule will be in place, and that schedule, I believe, is on the website. It might have been being updated. So if your child's a regular education student, give that a week so that they can finalize it, and then you can find the transportation, bus stops, times, and everything will be on the Revere Public Schools website.
One question about using the playgrounds in the elementary schools. We're not going to have that happen at this time. Obviously, as safety and medical guidance changes, that could be a possibility down the line. But right now, we're not going to have students gathering in the elementary playgrounds.
One of the questions is, are kids still going to have art, music, gym, etc.? And the answer is yes, that will be built into their school day. Another question is, do the kids have to get vaccinated? And the answer to that question is no. There is not actually an approved vaccine for kids at this time. So the kids will not be vaccinated right now. I know that there are a couple of studies going on trying to verify vaccine viability for kids. But I don't anticipate that information will be released until April or May at the earliest. It might even be later than that.
Dr. Kelly, I'm going to screen share for just a second.
Sure.
So one important document, if you see on the Revere Public Schools website, can you see my website, Dr. Kelly?
We can, but do you want to go back to the main page just so people can see how to get here?
Sure. So Pandemic Plans and Resources has a ton of information. And one document that I really want to highlight for everyone, that's one of the more well-done documents throughout this whole pandemic. Once you click on this subtab right here, if you see this document that says Protocols for Responding to COVID-19 Scenarios, and you click into that, it will redirect you because the document's been updated as the guidance has changed. So you just click on whichever language you'd like to review this in. I'm just going to click English for right now. And can you see that document in Word format?
No.
All right, I'm going to stop and share.
Yeah, we see the website, but now you can.
So this is a 22-page document available in all languages, and it really does an excellent job of taking you through kind of definitions of close contact, when someone becomes positive for COVID-19, and then probably the most powerful aspect of this document, and the one that we are going to follow to a T, are all kinds of scenarios that could happen not only within the school, but even on the way to school, on the bus.
Dr.
When-
Palucci, can you just enlarge it a little bit on
Yeah,
the
sure.
on the bottom right so we can, there you go. Thank you.
Is that good? Yeah.
Yes, much better.
So if you look at all of these protocols, we have scenarios where a student or staff tests positive, a close contact of student or staff tests positive, student is symptomatic on the bus, student is symptomatic at school, staff is symptomatic at home, staff is symptomatic at school. And it really goes through every single possible scenario that we could be faced with as a school community. And it has charts that really take you through each and every one of those scenarios, and then kind of gives you different paths that you would take depending on how it unfolds. So you see this top one here, we have an individual that's symptomatic, kind of explains the location of the event. If the testing result is negative, this is what's required. If the individual tests positive, this is what is required. And if the individual does not test, this is what is required. In this document, I strongly encourage you to visit it. I know it's 22 pages, but it's really user-friendly. They do a great job of chunking all of the information and really capturing every single solitary scenario that could come down the pike, and how we as a school system would respond to that scenario, and what you as parents or guardians could do for your child that may be in the midst of that scenario.
One of the questions on YouTube is, will we be sending out communications to families on the number of new cases and staff, students, and how often would we be doing that? Would that be weekly? And the answer is that we haven't finalized that determination yet. It's one of the items that we need to talk to the school committee about. One of the pieces that we're trying to balance is making sure that parents have all of the information that they need to have in order to make right decisions for their kids, but also maintaining people's confidentiality about their medical situations. We know that there are a number of other school districts that are reporting in different ways, and we've started looking at how they've been doing it in school districts that have already been in school in person. And we are going to learn from them and take guidance from them and from Dr. Kong, who's the head of the Revere Board of Health, on what the medical guidance is around release of information. So I don't have a definitive answer on that just yet, but we do appreciate the solace that it can give to parents and staff and everybody to have that information, but also recognize that we need to be careful about people being identifiable and people being able to know somebody's confidential medical information. So more on that to follow, I guess, is the answer for now. So we've got about 5 minutes left.
There was a question about temperatures being taken. Temperatures will not be taken when a student arrives at school. However, we as a district are going to send home resources for families. I'll just screen share real quick, give you a quick visual of one of those resources that could potentially be hung on a refrigerator or in your kitchen. And it just asks if your child has any of these symptoms, it's best to not send them to school on that day. Cough, sore throat, fever, muscle pain, chills, shortness of breath, or new loss of taste and smell. This has been translated in our 4 primary languages, and we're going to have a corresponding checklist that you can go through kind of each and every day just to say, you know, have I checked yes to any of these scenarios? And if so, I probably shouldn't send my child to school, and let me touch base with school personnel for next steps.
And that's one of the things that we're gonna also be sharing with families is, you know, our expectations of how we need you to partner with us to make sure the school stays safe. And that will be one of them, is going through that checklist every day and affirming that your child doesn't have those symptoms before you send them off to school. Where if they are sick, they might cause others to get sick. We want to definitely avoid that. There's a question about the RHS air filtration. Does it pass the test with the new filters? And the answer is yes.
There is a question about schools having masks every day for students. We are certainly going to have masks on hand. We know that nobody is perfect, and there are going to be days where a student forgets their mask, and they would be welcome to a school issued mask for that school day.
There's a question about students that need to take medication during school hours and how is that being addressed? That will continue to happen in collaboration with the school nurse, as it always has.
There is a question about siblings getting assigned to different cohorts. In other words, one sibling getting assigned to group A, another getting assigned to group B. I would contact your child's administration just to rectify that, because we did assure families and we're following through on making sure that siblings attend during the same week. Quick question about if a student does not have a school issue laptop, can they bring their personal laptop to school? Absolutely, if that's what they feel most comfortable with, as long as they can access all of the required technology platforms that have been going on in the remote setting.
So there are a number of comments about staying remote, and I just want to reiterate that parents are welcome to keep their kids in the full remote model. That's absolutely not a problem. There's a question about what was meant on the elementary schedules with block 1, block 2, block 3. And that was a way for us, it's really an organizational piece in the schools, but parents don't need to worry about it. When you get the individual schedule for your child, those times will be spelled out more clearly, and you'll understand when they're doing their literacy block, when they're doing their math block, science, social studies, art, music, etc. All of that will be in there.
So there was a question about no buses being available for Beachmont students. We have not taken away any transportation from any of our schools. Our transportation will run as it always has run. So if an elementary school never had school buses, we could not add school buses to that portion of the city, but certainly there was no instance where we took away buses.
One of the questions is, for the children who are behind through all of this, will there be extra help, any kind of a block for extra help soon? And the answer to that question is yes. We are developing a comprehensive summer program for any kids that want to participate and any parents who want their child to participate. One thing that I do want to say is we want to think about how we're presenting this situation to kids, especially younger kids who might struggle to understand where they are academically and where they need to be. And I want to acknowledge that none of us is doing exactly the same kind of work or living that we typically would do. And that is the same for kids. And I just want to be careful about how we say that, because we don't say that we're behind or that we haven't done our work or that we've missed out. In fact, I think the vast majority of all of us adults are probably doing double the work that we normally would do because of the pandemic. And the same is true for our kids. And we unfortunately have kids every year who experience very different kinds of trauma. And when they come back to us, whether they've lost a loved one or been sick themselves in a terrible way, when that happens to individual kids, we don't talk about how behind they are and how lost they are. We just talk about what we need to do to help them progress from where they are today. And even though we're talking about so many more children in this pandemic, we still should have that same kind of thought process and not make the kids feel like they're somehow inferior or less than because of what they've had to endure created by adults because of the pandemic. And so, I just want to put that out there for everybody to think about. The kids, as one of our colleagues has said, and I've repeated it many times, the kids are exactly where they should be in the middle of a pandemic. And as we move through the pandemic and vaccines become available and numbers go down, we can move back to a somewhat more normal track with the kids, just like we'll all do as adults.
Sure. So a couple of future items that were brought up. The sixth grade lottery will certainly take place. It may not take place as soon as it has in typical years, but we have started the planning process for that. And also at the upper level, talking about when students would graduate. So the school calendar is in place, but certainly we are kind of looking at all options as to how we could hold a ceremony for our students, just as we did over the summer for our graduating seniors in the class of 2020 last year. And as we get those details, we will certainly push them out.
Okay, I think somebody asked, is this a pilot? If so, when are we going to circle back on this conversation? And I guess in a sense it is a pilot. We are going to constantly look at the practices and refine them. And, our goal, what we would like more than anything, is for everybody to be protected and safe and have kids in for a full day every day, both weeks, and, get through the school year that way. I don't know that that's a reality for us right now, but we will continue to work toward that goal as we have been. And as I mentioned earlier, I want to reiterate, if something's not working for you, please reach out to your child's teacher or the principal, and we will make whatever adjustments and accommodations we can. Our goal is to make this work for everybody. Let me just see here. One of the questions is the school going to give masks to kids, or should parents give them? And our expectation is that kids will arrive to school with a mask on. So the kids will be bringing their own mask. If a child forgets one, or if their strap breaks or something of that nature happens, they sneeze into their mask, which we know some of the little ones will do. We have plenty of masks on hand and we'll replace them, but we do expect kids to arrive with a mask on.
Somebody asked about not just teachers being vaccinated, but school personnel. All K through 12 school employees are eligible for the vaccine. So those that would like to pursue that will be pursuing it. Another question was about preschool students having the opportunity to attend in person. We are planning in-person preschool hybrid program that will be communicated out to those families. One question about what types of masks can be worn. We cannot wear the gaiter, that mask that's kind of a covering that goes fully down. It would have to be a mask that straps behind your ears and covers your full nose and mouth. A very specific question about the Garfield pool that is not going to be open when we open, but certainly, again, as safety and guidance changes down the line, it's something that we have in mind.
And the swim team will be practicing there, just so that you're not surprised if you see and competing there. They have a new way that they're doing online meets, but right now they are the only people that will be using the pool. It's not going to be open for rentals or diving lessons or any of the other stuff it had been open for before. One of the parents asked the question, should kids log in remotely if they can't go to school? And yes, that is something that we're going to work on, and principals will be sharing the specifics of that. But for example, if your child has to stay home to quarantine but is well and feels good, then we certainly want to make room for them to log on to that class remotely and not miss any of their lessons.
Question about enrolling a kindergartner in the fall. Asking if you have to go in person to the Beachmont school. Certainly not. You should call the Parent Information Center. They will certainly help you with registration remotely.
There's a question about the middle school schedules, and if we could share more specifics on that. All of the principals, elementary, middle, and high school, will be hosting parent forums where they can talk about the nuances of the specific schedule for their school. So I'm going to ask that people hold the questions there, but I can just give a brief overview of the middle school schedule. Their schedule is a little bit unique compared to the high school and the elementary school. Those kids have 6 classes in their schedule, and on a given week that they're in person, they will have 4 of those classes, and then on their remote week, they will take the other 2 classes. In the next 2-week period, those classes will rotate. So the 2 classes they had remotely the first time will be in their in-person schedule, and 2 of the classes that they originally had in person will move to remote. And they will keep cycling through that way so that they see each class in person a couple of times in that cycle, and we'll see each class once in the remote cycle. But it's confusing. And I think it'll be easier to hear coming from the teachers and the parents at the middle school level. They'll be able to explain in greater detail. And I know that the principals are setting up those webinars next week. So you should be keep an eye out for those. Somebody asked if they need to send their kids with antibacterial gel, mask, and face shields, and somebody else asked if sanitizer is available throughout the school. And the answer is yes, the sanitizer is available throughout the school. You don't need to send your child with sanitizer, but if they want to keep one in their backpack, that's always a good idea. You do not have to send them with face shields. If you have a child with special needs who has a particular face shield that they prefer, then that would be unique, and absolutely, please send that. But for kids who are in that situation, we have face shields on hand at school. Somebody asked if there'll be a tour for freshmen at the high school. We're minimizing all of the walk around, but one of the reasons we wanted to bring the freshmen in first was so that the school team could transition with them and do some work with them around understanding where the bathrooms are, where the learning commons is, where the biology labs are, and doing those pieces before the building is full of students. And when I say full, we only anticipate that out of the 2,000 students at the high school each week, because they're alternating. We have about 1,300 kids coming back, but there would only be about 650 in on each week. So we wanted to get the freshmen in first and help them with that transitional piece.
Someone asked about siblings, having siblings, one at the middle school, one at the high school, and the start time being 7:35. There'll still be that kind of grace period from 7:35 to 7:50 where students will eat breakfast, get their breakfast, eat their breakfast, before they then roll into either advisory or morning meeting or class 1. So certainly don't stress about the 7:35 start time. I believe it's a student asked if students would be returning to the building after lunch. No, so if you look at all 3 schedules at every level, lunch distribution occurs, students go home. Sometimes there's a remote responsibility in the afternoon, but not a return to in-person after lunch.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen very quickly because there was a question about the high school schedule.
Mhm.
This is what the schedule would look like for high school students. And again, this is in the letter and it's on the website. But in their in-person week, they would have breakfast in their first period classroom and proceed to their second, third, fourth period and be dismissed. After they get home, there's an optional office hours that they can log on to or not. They're not required to do that, but if they had a question for their teacher, the teacher would be available in that time frame. At 1:20, so an hour after dismissal, they do need to log into advisory. And then there is a last period of the day from 1:40 to 2:40 when all kids log in. And on Mondays, it would be whatever class they had first period. On Tuesdays, it would be whichever class they had second period. Thursdays would be third period, and Wednesday would be third period, and Thursday would be fourth period. When the kids are at home, they log into one of their 4 classes, and that's again following the same rotation: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, period 1, 2, 3, 4. They also can log into the optional office hours, and they have to log into advisory, and then they have to log into that class at the end of the day. So they're really they're required to log into their advisory, and it's 2 classes, but it's the same class. And what the teachers are working on now is developing deeper learning lessons that they can really explore a topic deeply when they have all of their kids logged in the morning or in person, and all of the kids logged in the afternoon. But again, the principals will be holding meetings that they can go over the more specific details that I think parents will want to hear for their specific school. Somebody put a great quote in the comments on YouTube that I just want to repeat. It says, "No questions. It's all overwhelming for all, but we feel grateful that you're part of the Revere schools." So we appreciate that you're grateful, unbelievably appreciative to everybody who's working with us and helping us think through all of these difficult things. It absolutely is complicated. I think that when the principals do their sessions, things will become clearer because they will be able to answer your specific questions about your child and how that particular building is going to operate. But I do want to say that all of the teachers and the administrators and everybody have worked really hard to try to develop something that they think will meet the needs of the parents who want their kids at home and the parents who want their kids in school. And we're going to work as we go and get better and better as we go. And hopefully with your partnership, we can be as successful as possible for all of the kids. So Dr. Galucci, I know that we're over time. There were 3 people with hands up, and I just want to give them an opportunity to ask their question. The first one is Paula, if you want to ask your question.
Hey, Paula.
And Paula, you're on mute, so you'll want to unmute.
Boa noite.
Boa noite.
Eu gostaria de agradecer todo o suporte que a escola tem me oferecido. Posso continuar falando? Eu gostaria de agradecer todo o suporte que a escola tem me oferecido. A minha filha é brasileira e mesmo ela tendo esse estudo online em casa, ela tem desenvolvido muito bem. Eu tinha algumas perguntas, mas todas já foram respondidas. E eu espero que esse ano ainda ela consiga voltar para a escola e eu espero que a gente possa continuar tendo esse suporte, porque é um suporte agradável e sem peso. Então, eu agradeço toda a equipe da escola, desde o começo do ensino até hoje. Muito obrigada e boa noite.
Thank you very much. And we'll definitely continue to put in our best effort. I'm going to bring up Elizabeth. Elizabeth?
Hello.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well, thanks. Did you want to ask a question?
No, only I want to say thank you for this information, and I can hear well the information about in the for Spanish, but after I go in English and I catch something.
Oh, okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for the information.
Okay.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
You're welcome. Good night.
Good night.
And the last one we have is Priscilla.
Hi, Priscilla.
We're like echoes, Richie. Okay, I think Priscilla maybe didn't want to talk. Okay. So I think that is that's going to conclude for tonight. And please do watch for notices from the principals about their own town hall meetings where they'll be able to answer a lot of the specific questions that parents have about their school in particular. And thank you all for being here. We appreciate you taking the time. And we really look forward to partnering as we go